Rigor.
Mortis isn't a death?
Stiffness after death. Stiff, mortis, death. Right? Have you heard of rigor mortis?
Yes.
When people die, their body over time, in timing of death, since death, will stiffen. And the reason it stiffens is because muscles actually contract. And all muscles will contract. Now, why is that true? Well, one of the most fragile organelles in a cell is endoplasmic reticulum. So when a person dies, one of the first things that breaks down in cells is ER. So that means in a muscle cell, one of the first things that's going to break down is sarcoplasmic reticulum, right, when you're dead. So what do you get? This flood of calcium. And why do muscles contract? Because they were all like this. Now where do they stop? Now you have no ATP, so where does it stop? We're together forever, Armand. Right? It stops right here. It stops still with that tight cross bridge. Muscles are fully contracted. Until you get what we call post-rigor, which is when actin and myosin start falling apart. And as soon as actin and myosin start falling apart, muscles will relax, right? They get mushy, right? They start decomposing. And so that rigor and post-rigor is really related to this. Calcium present, ATP present, we can cycle all we want. Get rid of ATP, we stop there. Get rid of calcium, we stop here. Does that make sense? So the only thing left to really just, so I don't care where you put number 1 on this story. I think your textbook doesn't put it here, but this is where it makes sense to me. Let's start where we are at rest. Let's get a signal, an action potential. Let's trigger the release of calcium. Let's change the shape of troponin, displace tropomyosin. Let's do the power stroke cycle. Laura.
So 45-degree angle, that's the contracted state?
Correct.
Okay.
90 is the relaxed state. So it's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, because it's the low energy, is the contracted state.
Yeah, and that's why it's kind of counterintuitive. The contracted state is the low energy state. The relaxed state is the high energy state. But if you think about it that you want to be able to respond rapidly, then you would want to be right here ready to go. You wouldn't want to have to be down here and then first break down ATP to get to the high energy state so you can contract. So you want it to be eager to contract, but being prevented from contracting just physically. Okay. And that's the way we stay.
What happens to the ADP that's on the...
Oh, thank you. Remember, we said that myosin can only bind tightly to one thing at a time. As soon as it binds tightly here, we form this cross bridge. What we should do here is we should see it being released, ADP and PI, or just released out into the cytoplasm. And then what do you do with that? Oh, well, guess what? You use it to make more ATP. Okay? So it's just always there, always present. So this story we just told here, this would be the answer if someone were to ask you, for example, on an exam.
Oh, that's why.
Could you explain the power stroke cycle in muscle cells in response to calcium being present in the cytoplasm? This is the story to tell about that. And I think it's just kind of neat to kind of figure out where are you going to stop. The two things that are important are ATP and calcium. And where would you stop? If both of them are present, what happens? It just keeps going. If calcium is removed, it stops here. If ATP is removed, it stops here. And assuming you're alive, you're going to always have ATP, right? And so it's going to stop here. And that's because we prevent these things from associating with each other. So if you walk through the diagrams in the textbook, this is what it's talking about here. There's its power stroke cycle in there. One thing that you'll see is that the book will talk about, and you may see things talking about phosphate being released before ADP. Doesn't really matter. these things happen so rapidly that it's conceptually easier to think about it in terms of, are you either going to have ATP or its breakdown products, or are you going to bind to actin? It doesn't matter that the phosphate ion does fall off before the ADP, that doesn't really matter. But the point is, right, is that you're ultimately going to lose the ADP and the PI, do the power stroke, so that you can bind ATP again to get back to the high energy state. So you have this constant cycling back and forth. Okay? So you can read through that, and that might be helpful for you there. Now,